Hello there. This is Jesús Flórez with the American English Hub. This is my latest IELTS mock speaking test. Admittedly, this was not a stellar performance, and I'm quite disappointed, to be fairly honest with you here. Compared to the other ones that are on this playlist, this one was definitely uh, less polished, certainly of a, let's say, of a lesser impact, if I may put it that way. But by all means, sit back, relax, enjoy, and you can learn from my mistakes. Learn to articulate your thoughts a little bit more carefully and slowly so that you don't run into the same issues that I did during this performance. Notice, for instance, the way that I use the expression towards the end in the feedback session to twist yourself into a pretzel. That's an amazing expression. To say that you were trying to say something that ended up being convoluted or complicated. And I should have just simply stuck to more uh, or a simpler way of saying things. So there you go. This is Jesus Flores with the American English Hub. Enjoy.
Hi, this is Nancy Buswell, and I'll be giving you a mock exam today. I will be taking notes. I'll be writing down some good things I hear and some bad things I hear. And when I'm taking notes, I can't talk. So don't worry if I'm quiet for a few seconds. It just means I'm writing. I'll also be using my old fashioned timer because IELTS examiners have to pay close attention to how long each section is. Now we'll begin the test. So you have just come into my examination room. I have looked at your ID. Now I'll give your ID back and I'll start asking questions. What is your full name, please?
Yes, my full name is Jesus David Flores Vela.
And where are you from?
I'm originally from Colombia in South America, but I now live in the United States.
Are you a student or are you working?
I'm working at the moment. I have a full time job in an office in our county circuit court. I've been there for almost 6 years now.
How did you get that job?
I basically looked into employment websites, job searches, and this opportunity came up back in 2020. I had been considering changing jobs. I was working as a receptionist back then, and the pay looked great. The conditions were presumably or ostensibly better, and I think that convinced me to go for it.
Do you like your job?
I do. I've been there, like I said, for a number of years. And back in 2022, I actually changed departments within the county structure. And I now am the court services officer for one of the judges in the family division section of the court. It's basically a combination of clerical work and a lot of support in the actual courtroom, managing basically everything.
And now we'll talk about shoes. How often do you buy new shoes?
I'm going to say that I'm doing that maybe once a year, potentially twice, depending on how much or how quickly actually they wear out. And they do. I do a lot of walking. And so I am basically requiring a new pair of tennis shoes or sneakers at least once a year.
Have you ever bought shoes online?
I have actually. For the last perhaps 5 or 6 years, I've only bought them online. I haven't been um, into an actual store, physical store, to try them on first before wearing them. I I used to think that it would be a problem, but after the first few times, I realized that it really doesn't make much of a difference. The size charts are pretty accurate these days.
When was the last time that you bought new shoes?
Well, I didn't buy them, but they were bought for me as a Christmas present. last year's December. So the pair I'm wearing right now is still quite fresh.
And do you prefer comfortable shoes or fashionable and good looking shoes?
That's a good question. Right now, I definitely have a stronger preference for comfortable shoes more than the look. I do, having said that, have a pair of dress shoes that I will use when I go to church.
Thank you. That's the end of part one. Now I'll send you the part two topic. Now I'd like for you to describe a trip that you enjoyed and would like to take again. You have 1 minute to prepare. Then I'd like for you to speak on this topic for 2 minutes. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Good. You have 1 minute to prepare. Time is up. Now I'd like for you to speak on this topic for 2 minutes. Don't worry if I stop you. You may begin now, please.
Yes, I'll speak to the time back in 2023 when I had the chance to do a side trip to a place called St. Mary's in Kansas. I need to provide a little bit of background here because this is actually kind of a side trip. The main reason I went to Kansas was to attend a Catholic conference organized by the company called Angelus Press. They're one of the largest publishing companies of Catholic material here in the United States. And every year, they host a 3 day conference in the state of Kansas, typically in Kansas City. Now, the conference, as you can imagine, is or goes in a way that most other conferences take place. There are plenty of sessions to attend, breakout groups, and so on. The side trip that I want to focus on here, because I need to provide this context, is that on the third day, I had a chance to go with two friends from the chapel that we frequent or that we used to frequent at the time. We went on a short, about an hour or so road trip from um, Kansas City to St. Mary's in Kansas. We went there to visit a recently uh, constructed church by this organization. The church is called the Immaculata. It happens to be, at least according to the information provided back then, one of the largest Catholic churches in the United States, potentially in North America. It is a massive structure. It is several stories high, and from the outside, it is quite imposing. It basically looks like a cathedral. And I would love to make the trip again just to admire more of it because we
Thank
really
you.
only had
Time is
about,
up. Now, do you think that you really will be able to take this trip again?
it seems unlikely now that I have more children, but definitely just the sheer scale of the project would make me seriously consider trying to make arrangements to see it again.
Thank you. That's the end of part two. Now we'll start part three. You have just talked about a trip that you enjoyed and would like to take again. Now we're going to talk about traveling in general. So, first of all, do people in your country, and you can choose which country you talk about, but do people in your country usually prefer to travel alone or with others?
Generally, I'm going to say that at least in Colombia, traveling in groups is preferred. There seems to be, generally speaking, a greater sense of collectivism in Latin American cultures, and that manifests itself in people wanting to travel in groups. Solo travel is kind of foreign to that culture.
Now, can you think of any advantages and disadvantages of traveling alone? So, what are some advantages and some disadvantages to traveling alone?
Well, you can argue that when you travel by yourself, you are or you would enjoy a greater degree of freedom in choosing how you want to go about your itinerary. And also, in addition to that, if you're not having to, let's say, chaperone others, you are in a way eliminating a source of stress. The disadvantages could potentially, again, well, could be you could look at it this way. When one travels by themselves, um, there's a likelihood, I believe, of feeling lonely and not having that ability to share the joy of traveling and discovery with others. There's something about sharing experiences that seems to enhance, let's say their effectiveness.
To enhance their effectiveness? Whose effectiveness?
The effectiveness of traveling, discovering, doing things. Well, traveling in, if we're going to be considering basically traveling as into unknown, destinations, or let's say how lasting of an impact, let's say the experience has. I feel that in a group, that effect or effectiveness is going to be yeah, enhanced. I think is a good word for it.
Okay, I'm still not sure what you mean by effectiveness. Um, but let's go on. Let's go on. Maybe I'm missing something. Let's talk about planning or preparing for a trip. So before someone takes a vacation, takes a trip, what are some things that people need to do to
Well,
prepare?
depending on the destination, you need to have a certain amount of paperwork in order.
Right.
For instance, if you're going to be traveling internationally, you definitely have to have your passports handy. Other than that, after that's been taken care of, it comes down to um, how much of a financial um, investment you will be looking at and deciding how much time you're going to devote to different set of activities. Is it going to be either sightseeing or going on tours? It comes down to time management after the
Mm-hmm.
logistics are taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think it was easier or harder in the past to prepare to travel somewhere?
It's a good question.
Mhm.
Potentially, I'll tentatively here say that it was easier because, at least the way I see it, there are greater restrictions now on some documentation that you need in order to travel internationally. Let's focus on that. There seems to be an ever-growing list of permissions that one needs to go to certain places or electronic authorizations, and the ever changing nature of global politics affects, for instance, how powerful your passport is. And so a country that you might have been able to go to in the past without a visa may now require one.
Thank you. Time is up. That's the end of the end of part 3 and the end of the exam. Now I'll need some time to look at my notes and write down my scores. So let me have a little bit of time for that. I do need to think.
Absolutely. I can pause the recording now and then we can take it up again when you're ready.
Sounds good. Okay, I've spent some time looking at my notes and thinking and agonizing about this score because I don't like this score. I don't like this score, but I'm I'm writing down what I think is correct based on what I heard. Um, the score I'm giving you is a band 8, but I'm not happy with it because you sound higher. But looking at the individual sections, I think I can make a case as to why I'm giving this score. But I do have to say, exa- uh, the difference between an 8 and a 9, or an 8, 8.5, and a 9 is really is really hard. Um, and it's I don't want you to be discouraged, but let me tell you why I gave you an 8 and why I'm not happy with it, because you sound very close to a native speaker, but there were 3 cases, 3 sections where you did not sound like a native speaker. So to give someone a band 9 in one of the 4 areas, you need to sound like a native speaker. And in 3 of the areas, I did not think you sounded you. I did not think the mistakes you made would also have been made by a native speaker. Now, I do have to say, other examiners might disagree with me because this is on the borderline, and I'm not happy right now because I hate giving you an 8 because goodness gracious, you speak very very well, but I'm trying to follow the letter of the law. So the as you may know, IELTS examiners write down 4 scores. Later, someone else writes down the total speaking score, and that's what you see in the results. But examiners are listening for 4 things, and I'll write these 4 things down and tell you the scores. Fluency and coherence is borderline 8 and 9. To tell the truth, all 3 of the 8s are borderline 8 and 9. What I mean by that is, man, I had to think: is he an 8 or is he a 9? And also, another examiner might say, Miss Buswell doesn't know what she's talking about. That's a 9. I understand that because when you get to the very high levels, yeah, an 8 and a 9, or the total scores of 8, 8.5, or 9, which we don't write down the total score. We write down the 4 scores. Someone else adds up the scores. I'm not thinking about the total score. I never think about the total score. I only think about each of the 4. So other examiners might disagree with me, So for fluency and coherence, well, your fluency is a 9. You're extremely comfortable speaking English. But I did not think part 3 was a band 9. I didn't. You gave a short answer to the first question. I wanted more. Now this may be because well, you do know, yeah, you do know a lot about the exam, but maybe you didn't notice that, in part 3 we do want more details. So my question was, do people in your country prefer to travel alone or together? I thought that answer was too short.
Okay,
I
that's
thought you
fair.
could have given more details, examples, exceptions. I just thought that was too short. When I asked for advantages and disadvantages of traveling alone, I'm not sure that you gave me 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages. I marked down, you gave me 1, and I might have missed 1 or 2 when I was taking notes. But if I'm correct, then you didn't answer my question. I said, what are some advantages and some disadvantages? That means I wanted 2 or more of
Mm-hmm.
each. And if I only heard 1, then you didn't answer my question. But the main problem was, and I think you know what I'm gonna say, you said their effectiveness. And I got lost
Yeah,
twice.
that one.
I got
Yeah,
lost twice.
yeah. I twisted myself into a pretzel there. Yes, that was. Yeah, that was a bit of a wreck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because first of all, I didn't know who there was. I assume you were saying THEIR, the pronoun there, and then I didn't know what effectiveness you were referring to. So the 2 words confused me. Probably you needed to say, "Let me start over. Let me start over, and
Mm.
let me say this again." Instead of, like you said, twisting yourself into a pretzel. Oh boy, that's really good vocabulary. You could have said, "You know what? That's a little strange. Let me say that again."
Yeah, let me
But
reward that. Yes, no,
so
definitely. Yeah,
the
that
fact that
was.
I was confused twice means I can't give you a 9, in my opinion, based on my understandings. You should be a 9 in fluency. You should be. But today, I think you were an 8. Now, vocabulary, again, borderline 8 and a 9. I did hear one, I heard 4 things, 2 things that are not correct, and 2 things that could go either way that a native speaker would not say. So if I want to give someone a 9 in vocabulary, it you need to be saying things that native speakers would say and not making or would not make a mistake with. Now, when I say native speaker, I mean an educated native speaker, not just not just a high school graduate.
Mhm.
Your typical high school graduate. There may be some high school graduates who speak very well. Um, Sorry, I'm talking too much. How is that possible? Hmm. Now I'm emotional because I don't like the score I'm giving you. But I'm explaining.
Yes.
I, I think your vocabulary is an 8 because you said in part 1, talking about when you got shoes, you got them last year's December. I heard last year's December. Well, we don't say that. I've never heard of that. Now,
True.
December of last year, I got them in December of last year, is what we would say. A native speaker would never say last year's December. Now, there's always the possibility that that's British English and I just don't know it. However, you lived in the US, so I don't think you have any hidden British English expressions that I don't know. By the way, you used the word ostensibly. So the shoes are presumably or ostensibly better. When you had the 1 minute to prepare for part 2, I looked up ostensibly because I wasn't 100%
Oh,
sure what
okay.
it meant. I'm just admitting to you and your viewers that's a word that I wasn't certain about. I thought, did he use that correctly? And yeah, you did. Ostensibly, I still have it on my page somewhere. Ostensibly means, I Googled it, means, yeah, well, it's very similar to supposedly, but not quite the same. ostensibly means it appears to be true, but it might not be.
Yeah, it
So
has the
yeah, very
appearance of.
the appearance of truth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you did use that correctly, and I had the time, that 1 minute to look it up. Very good. You knew. I heard something that I don't hear very often. You said uh, tennis shoes or sneakers. I grew up saying tennis shoes. I didn't even know the first word was tennis. For
Oh,
I don't know,
okay.
I was probably in high school when I realized, we always said tennis shoes, but actually it's tennis shoes. But sneakers is more common now. I still call them tennis shoes, sports
Mm.
shoes, sneakers. It partly depends on what part of the country you're from.
Yeah, here, I mean, up here, definitely sneakers is the
Yeah,
dominant
it
one.
is. And in the South, tennis shoes was dominant, but it may be less common now. I'm not sure. Now, you said the shoes are still quite fresh. At first, I thought that was a mistake, but then I thought, wait, I think the young people say that. I think the young people use the word fresh for clothes. So that's a generational thing. I'm a generation or two older than you are. And I think that is correct. Now, in part two, at the very beginning, you said, I'll speak to the time when da 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 da. First of all, I don't like that introduction, but that's a pet peeve of mine. I don't
Mhm.
like really, I don't like saying, now the first thing that popped into my head. I don't like it when people say that. Now you didn't say that, but that's just my pet peeve. I prefer that you start different ways, like just with the time. No, 2 years ago I took a trip, or a little bit of an introduction or background. I haven't taken very many trips because I'm quite busy with my work and my family. But I took this really interesting trip. Da 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 da. But you
Mhm.
said I'll speak to the time. To me, to doesn't sound like the right preposition. Uh, it could be, it is correct, but to me it doesn't sound right. I'll speak about is what would sound natural to me. I'll speak to might be correct, but it doesn't sound right. Have you heard that before?
I have actually, yeah.
Okay.
You can you can argue that there's been a rise of this verb collocating now with to in
Okay.
political speech. Like you can
Okay.
find Vice President J.D. Vance, for instance, saying that, "Oh, I can't speak to that," or "I'll speak to that later." It's
Okay.
like
Yeah. Okay.
political and also corporate talk.
Okay. That makes sense because I was thinking it sounded kind of formal, like you're talking to a lawyer or something.
But that
Um.
is true. Definitely, the typical collocation is with about.
Okay. Now that makes more sense also because you are in a legal setting. Um. Okay. So that was my mistake for not knowing that it's used more commonly in other settings. But speak to the time. Okay. Yeah, you knew the words road trip. You knew imposing. The sheer scale of sheer is a good word, and the sheer scale of the building. In part three, you knew collectivism. That's very good. Solo travel. But then you used the word itinerary, but you didn't use it correctly, or the sentence was awkward. You said to go about your itinerary.
Yes, that was. Yeah.
That's the wrong collocation. To follow your itinerary, or generally we don't even,
Yeah.
we don't even talk about it like that. You said, I made an itinerary. Tuesday I will see this. Okay. Yeah, that was a problem. That was something a native speaker would not say. To chaperone is very good. It's a good French word we borrowed. You said a likelihood. You said logistics. And the last thing I wrote down that I liked was the ever changing nature of uh, international relations, or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, the ever
Global
changing nature.
politics. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
global
actually, I
politics.
probably should have, I feel now thinking back that I could have just, or I should have said, of, there's a very nice fancy term in, ah, foreign policy. Well, maybe not foreign
Mm,
policy, but
mm.
international relations. Let's see. You could say that, I think, too. But no, that one definitely I think could have been worded better.
Oh, no, I liked it. Well, I liked the ever-changing nature of, and then I didn't have time to write down the rest of it. But that part was good. Now grammar, uh, again, very close to a 9. Like at the very beginning, you said I had been considering changing jobs. That's actually excellent grammar. That's very complex. I had been, so what's that,
Yeah,
past perfect?
past perfect progressive. Yes, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
considering. Yeah, had been considering. Yeah, I didn't even know it was called past perfect
Yeah,
progressive. I
I mean,
I, I don't.
yeah, my actually, I didn't get to mention this. Before I came to live here, I actually went to college to be an English teacher,
Yeah,
as in
okay.
an English as a second language teacher. So I'm
Mhm.
quite familiar with the a lot of the jargon and terminology, that we use in the field. And so I know all the, well, I want to say that I know almost all the names of the tenses, in
Good.
English. And
Hmm,
so I'm
hmm.
quite familiar with them. Some just sound quite pretentious when you use them in conversation, but some are quite
Yeah, yeah,
useful.
yeah. Right. Yeah, I was a music teacher, a band and music teacher before I changed to English, and I don't have the education you have. So I have tried to learn the verb tenses, but I tell you what, sometimes I forget them. Uh, I haven't learned them well enough. However, as an IELTS examiner, what I need to know is the mistakes. I don't need to explain them unless I'm teaching someone. But oh, by the way, that's the clock. 5 minutes early.
Yes.
Mm. Okay, so let's talk about grammar. No problems in part one. And part two was an awkward sentence. You were talking about the conference. This was near the end. You said, it goes in a way that many conferences take place.
Like,
So it
yeah.
goes in a way, and that many conferences take place. That's not correct. Uh, you could say that's a vocabulary mistake, but to me that's a grammar mistake. The word order, maybe the words were not exactly right, but that was just very awkward. And then we had to enhance their effectiveness, where I just didn't understand what there was, and then I didn't understand effectiveness. I considered that a grammar mistake. It was also a coherence mistake. But then what made me decide for sure to give you an 8 was you said at the end of part three, to devote to different set of activities. I heard different set of activities, but that should be sets, right?
Yes.
Different
Yes.
sets. I didn't hear the S on sets. Now, that could be a pronunciation problem, but I don't think so, because you had 0 pronunciation problems.
Yeah, you can. I think you can mark that as uh, grammar mistake. Yes.
Right. So these are things I would not expect a native speaker to mistakes I was not expecting a native speaker to make. So that's why I'm giving you an 8, but it's extremely close to a 9. And the pronunciation and intonation is a band 9. Um, Even though an accent is acceptable, a mild accent is acceptable. I'm not sure I heard a Spanish accent. I if I closed my eye, or if I didn't know, not close my eyes, if I didn't know that your first language was Spanish, I wouldn't. I would think you were a native speaker. So you have done very well studying, probably in Colombia, but definitely taking in the sound of the language um, in the U.S. So yeah, a band 9 on that. There were 2 words that were slightly fumbled. I didn't even write them down. I think one was plenty, and it was just slightly fumbled. But that's a
Hmm.
native speaker would do that. in the two words, and again, I didn't write the second one, either one down, but a native speaker might just, and that was a slip of the tongue. Slips of the tongue are allowed. And that's why I didn't even write them down because I didn't think they were really a pronunciation problem or pronunciation problems. So the total score is an 8, but because three of the 8s were almost 9s, another examiner could have given you a 9 for 1, 2, or all 3 of those. So you're very close to an 8.5 or a 9.
Good. Very good.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Um, I don't think so. No, that was very thorough. Thank you. Yes, definitely some of those things. I mean, again, just looking back, the part about effectiveness that was egregious. Definitely, I was. Yeah. Yeah.
You got lost. You got lost in your sentence, and
Yeah. I did. Sure did.
instead of starting over, you said, "You just kept pushing. You just kept pushing," and I was going, "What? What are we doing? I don't understand." Um,
Yeah, I'll
but
need to
I think,
remember that. Yeah, that's a good repair strategy, and I'll have to remember that for my other upcoming tests. That you can
yeah,
actually do that. You can actually start over
yeah,
and give it another go.
yeah. I do that. I did that when I was teaching in China. I taught in China in the classroom for 19 years, mainly English to university English majors. Every now and then, I'd have to say, "Wait, let me start that sentence again," because I realized wait, I got lost. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with correcting yourself if you hear a mistake, because different set of activities, you could have said different sets. I'm sorry, I meant to say sets, or just make sure that you're clear that you're correcting yourself. Um, yeah, different set. Wait, sets. Or stupid mistake. Sets.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that'll do.